In this video, I'd like to demonstrate some more advanced features as it relates to conditional formatting. Whereas before I've used some of the drop-down items here in the ribbon to use some canned approaches to formatting the data. Sometimes that's not enough, and what we need to do is use a formula to do that. Now, before we can use formulas to format our data, first we need to understand how logic works in Excel. So we can write a logical statement like this, and by the way, we're going to be testing equal signs, less than, greater than, or, and not as our logical evaluators in this list 1 through 7. So the first one I would test is row 5's quarter equal to 3? So I'll say equals, and right up there, this is the quarter, so I'll click on it. So is C5 equal to 3? So the way I write it is equals C5 equals 3. And it says false, and I'll just kind of put it out here to the side so it can be seen for a little while longer. Now I will use a less than, greater than type of approach. I'll say I'm going to ask, is row 5's quarter less than 5? If I say equals C5, is it less than 5? And at 4 it should be true, and it is. Next, is row 5's quarter greater than 3? Equals C5 greater than 3. That's also true. Now we're going to get a little bit specialized here, and we're going to use one of these built-in Excel functions rather than these other operators. We're going to ask, is row 5's quarter either 3 or 4? And to do that, I type in equals or and a parenthesis, and then I can do a list of logical statements similar to the ones that I just created. As many of those as I want, separated by commas. So the first thing I want to ask is C5 equal to 3, or is C5 equal to 4? And one of those is true, and so it comes back as true. Now if I were to ask, is using a similar approach, is C5 equal to 2 or is C5 equal to 3? Well, it's neither of those, so I should get a false, which I do. In the next one, I'm going to use the AND function, which is comparable to the OR function and how we write it out. The question is row 6's quarter equal to 1, which it is, and is the revenue greater than 0.5? And it is. And the way we would write that is equals and then we list our logical statements. Is the quarter equal, which happens to be C6, equal to 1, and is the revenue greater than 0.5? And that comes out to true. Another thing we can do is the opposite of this first statement, which asks, is something exactly equal to something else? We can ask the reverse of that, which is in this case, is C5 equal to anything other than 3? So I'll say is equals not, and that's how I do that. Not C5 equal to 3. And is C5 not equal to 3? That is true. If I said, is it not equal to 4, then it would evaluate as false. Okay, now that we understand those rules of logic, we can use that to conditionally format our spreadsheets. So item number 8 here says, let's use formulas to bold quarter 3. So the way that we will do that is we will highlight that whole column, and I'll go under conditional formatting, and down here I'll click on New Rule, and from there I will select the last option, which is use a formula. Now it's a little weird the way we create these formulas. Rather than addressing the whole range, we just do an argument, or usually based on, or a function that's usually based on the first row that we're looking at. So in this case I will reference the first quarter there, which in my list, which is C5. So is C5 equal to 3? And although that's not true for this first one, it will be true later on, and Excel will apply the same logic for every single row. Now be careful not to click your arrow keys or things like that when you're using this particular menu editor because it'll introduce strange characters which are annoying. So for example, I'll hit the left key right now, the left arrow, and so it adds in something we don't want at all. Alright, and I haven't added a format yet, so I need to format it somehow. I will select bold italic and click OK, and as expected, there's my list with the 3's all highlighted. Alright, now this is going to be one of the hardest ones of all, and the question is, let's use a formula to find increases in revenue of more than 25%. Now, first thing to kind of talk about is how do you determine an increase from one row to the next of 25%? Well, the way you do that calculation is if it doesn't really make sense to ask the question until you get to the second quarter because you're asking about an increase over the previous one. And the way we do the math is we take the most current quarter, subtract the other one, that's how much it's gone up, and then we want to see that as a percentage of the original number, the one right before it. So D6 minus D5 divided by D5. And we would do a similar logic if we were to go down to the next row. We would say D7 minus D6 divided by D6. So there's that. So that just like that gives us the increase. In this case, it's 0.71. And if I were to then ask if that is greater than 0.25 for 25%, I could put a greater than sign there and 0.25, and it'll evaluate to true. So that's exactly what I want to do. Alright, so now the trick here is to not highlight the first field but the second one, because we're only going to ask if it's increased starting at the second field. And what I will do is I'll go conditional formatting, new rule, formula, and I'll say equals D6 minus D5 divided by D5 is this amount greater than 0.25? And if so, let's give it some type of formatting. In this case, I'll make it filled with a light orange. And I did the math out here on the side just so that we could verify whether it had gone up or down, and if it had gone up by at least 25%. And so we have a good run here up until we get to there, and then it only went up 16%, and so it's no longer highlighted. Alright, and the last one's not too bad. Using a formula to highlight in red revenue that's less than 600 but only in quarter one. And so that actually is an AND statement that is implied by that, because we want to know if the revenue is less than 600 and it's in quarter one. So I will highlight this whole row, this whole column. This time I want the whole thing because I'm not referencing something earlier in the list. So I want to know if it's less than 600 and in quarter one. So the way that I do that is I go new rule, formula. I want to say is E5, well actually I start off with an equals and E5 less than 600 and is the quarter, which is C5, equal to 1. So if both of those things are true, then it will be highlighted according to this rule. I just made up any formatting and I click OK. And so we see highlights happening, but only until we get to 573, and then after that it stops happening because we've surpassed 600.